Before you get comfortable, please know that there absolutely will be participation necessary with this, so look alive. I'm so excited to be here today to get an opportunity to talk to y'all about something that is very, very near and dear to my heart, and that is Beyond the Frame. For the past 4 years, my team and I here at the museum have been producing a series called Beyond the Frame. And it is, like I mentioned, it has been a little bit of a personal journey. So I'll give you a little bit of background to begin. We'll sort of have 3 parts to our talk today. And yes, I am kind of getting over something, so I apologize if I need to stop and take a little sip of water. But so this goes back to 2019, and Beyond the Frame really began as a reaction to a behind-the-scenes tour. So I was going around the museum. I had already worked here for about 2 years, and as I was going through the galleries, I was like, where's the art? Where's the art? Why is there no art here? And so I just figured that we just didn't collect a lot of art. I was shocked to find out how wrong I was. So here at the Mariners, we have approximately 2,400 paintings of various media, including over 1,100 watercolors and over 1,200 oil paintings. So when I got to go up to painting storage, and has anybody been able to go on a behind-the-scenes tour up to painting storage? Sometimes with Bronze Door, some of the other opportunities here. Folks have been able to go up to the magical room that is painting storage. It is spectacular, really and truly floor to ceiling paintings, racks and racks and racks of paintings. And I really think of works of art like friends, like people that I've yet to meet. So walking into a room completely full of brand new people that I get to meet and learn their stories was just an extremely exciting moment for me. So it would be really easy to say, okay, 2,400 paintings, let's just bring those out. Well, as many of y'all know, works of art have very particular housing specifications and needs. So they are being cared for nice and happy up in painting storage, but they might, the conditions in some of our galleries might not be conducive to just simply bringing them out as is. So after that, I was like, I need to talk about the art. How are we going to talk about the art? And at that time, our awesome leadership here was encouraging us to work with our collections management team, and we had the opportunity to bring out certain works of art for sort of temporary basis. So we would have an opportunity to bring them out into the galleries for a couple of hours and work with folks in the galleries. This was a precious school of, or group of YMCA kiddos that we had over the summer. And in this picture, we're actually learning about the oils on our fingers, which is why we don't touch artifacts. But so I began researching maritime art because my background is actually in art history, and I have my degree in art history, but I didn't know anything about maritime art. I mean, nothing. Like, I thought it was all ship portraits and like maybe, I don't know, watercolors, some seascapes. I didn't know anything. So when I got the opportunity to go up to painting storage and see how wrong I truly was, I knew that I wanted to learn more and learn all about the world that is maritime art. I also wanted to find ways to encourage people to look at works of maritime art. And so, you know, as we got out into the galleries, I especially worked with this one painting. It's a Robert Salmon painting of a ship off Liverpool. And I was a little disheartened because this is what I found with a lot of people when we got into the galleries and started talking about maritime art. I don't get it. What should I think about this? Maritime art isn't like real art. I need someone to explain it to me. or I feel intimidated when I look at art. And maybe that last sentiment is something that we can relate to. Has anybody felt intimidated when they look at a work of art in a gallery? Maybe modern art? Yeah, absolutely. So I realized that not only does art have this barrier to entry a lot of times, but maritime art in particular. And so then came, okay, how do we change this? How do we break this down? How do we alter this narrative? And so at this point, right as we had decided that we had wanted to start talking about the art, COVID hit. And in this moment when we needed connection more than anything, and when we wanted to start sharing messages that would, help people feel happy and at peace, everything, we're trying to figure out how do we do that now in this world that is so disconnected. And we did not have a multimedia department here. We had a couple of folks around the museum who were able to do some video, and I had never produced videos ever in my life. I was actually a sales assistant here at the time, which was really kind of crazy because it was like, why is this sales assistant talking about art and making videos? And, then everything changed, and that was the most wonderful, insane turn of events. And our leadership actually gave me a shot to start trying to figure out how to talk about the art. So we started filming. And as the series developed and grew, the concept of Beyond the Frame grew as well. It became, yes, absolutely, it grew as a series, but it also really became this mentality, this sort of way of seeing. And actually, this past December, we closed out the series with 30 episodes and well over 3 million views on social media. So this is something that I'm really, really proud of. So what does it mean to go beyond the frame? I talked about it being a mentality. So at its simplest, going beyond the frame is about seeing the work in front of you and feeling empowered to take a step beyond that mentally and to look at what's there, but to also look deeper. So it's about seeing both what's there and what isn't. And yeah, you're probably like, okay, Kyra, like this is a little woo-woo. Maybe you're thinking I'm a little bit crazy, and maybe I am a little bit crazy, but I promise stick with me because it's worth it. So Beyond the Frame really has 4 core goals. And so this mentality is how I approach script writing for the episodes, but it's also how I like to teach looking at works of art. And the very, very first is empowerment. And this is so important to me. This is the very most important aspect to me, because if we go back just a few minutes ago and we talk about, those hands raised, the people who have felt intimidated looking at a work of art, myself included, so often if we meet a work of art in a gallery and we don't get it, and so we don't give it the time, we get frustrated and we walk past it, instead of taking a moment, sticking with it, and maybe figuring out, maybe I don't like it, and that's okay, but maybe it's figuring out why I don't like it, why I do like it, why is it confusing to me, why is it intriguing to me. So if we don't feel empowered to stop and look for ourselves, then we're never going to get past that bridge there. And I want to really, really push this idea here that nobody is more qualified or equipped to look at a work of art than somebody else. We all have our own lives, our own experiences, our own likes and dislikes, and there might be what's in a textbook, absolutely, but your experience with a work of art is your own. And so that brings us to the second point, is to encourage creative thinking. So we've got five senses, and though when we're in a museum experiencing a work of art, we can't touch it, we can't taste it, we can't smell it, and we probably can't hear it. But if we take that mental step into the painting, maybe we can put ourselves in that scene. So maybe we see waves crashing. What do those sound like? Maybe we're standing on a pier on a blustery day. What does the sea air smell like? Or perhaps the artist has captured rays of sunlight. What does that feel like on your skin? Put yourself into the painting in that moment and think about what you might be sensing. So then as we find ourselves sensing the atmosphere of the painting, the sights, the smells, the sounds, what is that stirring up? So taking a moment to explore our own thoughts and feelings is one of the most important things that I try to encourage when looking at a work of art. Is this a comfortable or uncomfortable experience? What do you like or dislike about it? And I've mentioned that a few times because I think that figuring out what you dislike about a work of art, you don't have to like every single work of art, but if you can sit down and pinpoint what you don't like about it, I think that can tell you just as much about that work as finding something that you do like or understand. And lastly, all of this works together to building your own narrative. So I really believe that experiencing a work of art is like building a relationship, because you can take the opportunity to actually open yourself up to a work of art. And I feel like the more that we do, the more the works can actually open up to us. I had mentioned that works of art can be like people, like friends that we're getting an opportunity to meet. But we would never get a chance to hear their stories and, maybe learn some of their personal secrets and get to know them on a deeper level if we don't take the time to actually talk to them, to meet them a little bit, to be vulnerable. And that can be an uncomfortable experience. Looking at art is not always this comfortable experience, but that's a part of our own narrative, because maybe I've had a painful experience in my life that leads me to feel differently than perhaps you have. Or maybe you have a happy memory that you feel is reflected in the painting in some way that makes seeing it even more impactful than the person right beside you. So I want us to all keep in mind as we move through this that there is no right or wrong answer here. There is no right way to look at a work of art, and there is no wrong way. There is just your way. So for the next part of our session today, I want to equip you with a few tools, because there is no right or wrong way. But there are some really awesome tips or tricks that artists have actually use in creating works of art that do inform our experience there. And if we take some time to learn a few of those, and it can actually heighten our experience with the work. So we're going to talk a little bit about color theory and psychology, scale, light, line, and composition. And we can spend like literal years and years studying these things. We're not going to do that today. We're going to do super, super high level. So the first one that we're going to look at is color theory and psychology, which is one of my favorite things. I love color, and the interaction with color is very, very unique. So oftentimes we see color represented on a wheel. Let's see if I can get my, there we go. And so we start off with our primary colors, blue, yellow, red. Everything from there is just a mix of those colors, and primarily we see primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. So our primary colors are going to be here with this bold line, our secondary colors are going to be here with this dashed line, and our tertiary are going to be here with the dotted line. And It's not terribly important to break that down a lot, but the color wheel can help us really quickly identify complementary and analogous colors. So complementary colors are ones that are across from each other on the color wheel and are typically used to create contrast in a painting. So for red, the complementary color is green. For blue, the complementary color is orange. And for yellow, the complementary color is purple. And those, when placed together in a painting, can draw your attention. They can create dis-ease. They can be really, really exciting. Then on the other hand, we've got analogous colors. And analogous colors are those that are actually next to each other on the color wheel. And an artist might use analogous colors to actually create this sense of harmony or peace. So a lot of times, we've got like nice, pretty sunset colors here, or maybe we've got ocean colors, and maybe we've got the colors you'll see sort of in grass. They're basically just the colors that are going to be, where did my pointer go? I think I lost it. That are going to be next to each other on the color wheel. So an artist might use those when they want to bring a sense of calm to a piece. And then we've got temperature. So a color's temperature can be used to create an effect that the artist might use in a work. So warm colors are typically, red, orange, yellow. And then we've got cool colors, which are like green, blue, purple. But then we also have temperatures of the hues. So we've got warm red, warm yellow, warm green, warm blue, cool blue. And an artist might use the temperature of these hues to actually indicate or, change our thinking about something. So maybe if you think about a nice, cool glass of water, maybe that's going to be this, nice, cool blue here. It's crisp and refreshing. But then maybe we've got, like warm water. We're looking out over at the beach on a nice warm day, and maybe that's the color of the water there. But the artist can use color temperature to inform what we're thinking about color. So then color psychology is actually based in color theory, and it's the concept that different colors affect the brain in different ways. So give me an angry color. Red, absolutely. How about a calm color? Blue. How about a peaceful color? Green. What about what's that? Light blue, absolutely. What about a happy color? Yellow, yes. Nice. Yes, absolutely. And so everything has color unless it is truly achromatic, meaning without color. And achromatic colors are only shades of gray that are mixed from pure white and black pigment. So whites and blacks can even have colors, can have hues to the pigment, but they're not truly achromatic. So you can even have warm whites and cool whites as well. And all of those work together to affect our thinking. So that all goes into color psychology. So next we're going to talk about composition and line. So composition can get really, theoretical in a lot of different ways. But ultimately, at its very simplest, it's the arrangement of the elements in a work of art. And I've used these grids because a lot of times artists will use different types of grids to actually lay out some of their compositions. This is broken down into thirds because a very common compositional structure is the rule of thirds. It's used to help create interest. A lot of times, if you're placing something in either the left left third or the right third, or even the top or the bottom third, it can create interest in a different way than if you had your canvas broken up into fourths. And we'll talk about breaking it up into fourths in a little bit. So then we can have balanced and unbalanced compositions. So with compositions, basically the weight of the elements in a work, or the elements in a work of art have weight. And so if they're evenly distributed across the canvas like we see here on the left, this is going to be a balanced composition. And this feels organized, it feels calm, and it feels still. Sometimes it can also feel heavy, but basically it's typically used to portray order, calm, and stillness. And then we've got an unbalanced composition. So over here, we see this teeny tiny little blue square, and then all of those big pink rectangles off to one side. And that creates this composition that is weighted off to the right-hand side more heavily. And this can create drama, it can create interest, but it can also create this uneasy feeling. As if, you know, some of these elements are stacked against that one element on the left-hand side. So we can even read story into the way that an artist has structured their composition. Maybe they're trying to tell us something about what's actually happening in the scene. So then we've got line, and line also can be a lot of different things. So this can be the nature of the physical appearance of a line. It can be brush strokes, but it can also be eye lines, which are sort of imaginary lines, and we'll look at that as well. So when we consider the qualities of a line, we can start with the most basic aspect. Is the line thin? Is the line thick? Is it varied? Is it sharp? Is it jagged? Or is it smooth and flowing? And how do those aspects and elements of the actual character of the line make us feel? So this line here on the left, is this a happy line? No. It's what? It's aggressive. Maybe it's excited, but it's sharp, it's angular. And it also doesn't have a lot of variance. It's very hard-edged. Whereas, what about this one? Somebody tell me about this line. Yeah. What about the actual structure of the line? What's that? Smooth. Yeah, absolutely. And the line itself is even varied. So it has a little bit of gesture to it. It has variance to it. So the line actually moves between thick and thin. And there's even a part where the line actually breaks ever so slightly, but we know that that little flip is still a part of the line because of the structure of this varied line. We don't read it as two individual lines. So then let's look at examples of line. This is actually a painting from our collection, but the artist has used line, this very heavy, thick line, although it is varied. He's made it expressive, but he's made it to actually look like a woodblock print. So these thick, heavy lines that create outlines, they actually flatten the elements of a work of art. And so they're typically used to make things look cartoony, to make things look like illustrations, because we don't walk around with big old thick outlines around us. We have more of like modeled structures. So if you were drawing a person and you wanted it to be really realistic, you might not use a heavy outline. But so obviously heavy outlines have their use and their intention. So then we've got very fine, thin lines. And this is actually a lithograph by an artist that we'll look at a little bit later as well. But in line drawings themselves, it's important to consider the character of the line itself. Is that line varied, or is it very literal? It can be really fine and thin, but is it gestural, or is it very literal? So we can actually look at a close-up of this, and we can see that, like, while the artist does have very, very literal outlines to give us very clear information about this shipwreck, he's also created a lot of really beautiful, loose, very gestural lines that create this movement in the water. So we can see the way that he's using these curving, undulating lines to create these swirls and these eddies in the water. And it creates a lot of variance and interest here. So with this too, we can also consider brushstrokes. So what do the brushstrokes mean? So we can look at the artist's intention with brushstrokes. So on the left here, we've got a piece by an artist named Jose Maria Lopez Mesquita, and he actually painted this work outdoors, en plein air, at the site of the subject. So he was actually a Spanish impressionist, and he, like many impressionists who were painting en plein air, needed to capture a scene really quickly. So he's not going to have time to sit there and render this boat in super, super fine detail. So he's working with very large, quick brush strokes. So not only is it a very practical application of paint, but it creates a sense of atmosphere, a sense of movement and expediency. Whereas this piece on the right, which is a snippet of a piece that we'll look at numerous times today, this one we can see these nets are rendered in painstaking detail. Like, if you get close to this painting, I think he painted some of these nets with like a single brush, like strand. They are so fine and detailed, but he would not have been able to do that en plein air. So this is a piece that would have been created over probably several months in a studio. And so that line, those brush strokes, they tell us about the artist's intention. Are they trying to portray detail, or are they trying to portray a feeling? And oftentimes, the larger the brush stroke, the more it is about sort of the feeling of being in this moment. So they can be very, very expressive. And both absolutely have their importance depending on the intention of the artist. So then next we're going to look at eye lines and compositional structure. So eye lines are really, really fun because they're like lines that aren't there, and you get to like use your imagination to map through and try to figure out, almost like playing I Spy, what an artist is trying to show you. So they leave room for us to actually create these imaginary paths within a work. And an artist can create eye lines within a piece by actually placing or spacing objects within the composition in a certain way to lead our eye through the piece. So eye lines are directly correlated to and informed by the compositional structure of the piece. So we're going to talk about three basic compositional structures that will serve as fun little tools for us. And after you leave here, I hope that the next time you're in a gallery, you will look for some of these compositional structures, because they almost feel like fun little Easter eggs after you've learned some of these. So the first one is linear composition. It's typically made up of vertical and horizontal lines, and they tend to convey stillness or calm. So this work is Gloucester Inner Harbor. It's by Fitz H. Lane. And the artist here has actually mathematically broken this canvas up into quadrants. So this is the direct middle of the piece. And then if we break those halves down again, his horizon line runs perfectly in the bottom quarter of the piece. Pretty much all of the ships fall perfectly within the lower half of the piece. That row of clouds there, perfectly along the top, the third line. And then we even see the vertical structure and breakdown of this piece. So right here in the center, we've got a worker. Right here to the right quadrant, we've got another fisherman. And then right here on the left-hand side, he's actually used this line to create the inlet. So this is very, very intentional. And how does this piece feel? Still, exactly. And that also is emphasized by the vertical line of the mast. So he's created this very, very organized mathematical structure of composition in the work that's then reinforced by all of these vertical lines in the masts and all of these ships lined up in this nice, neat horizontal line. So he is using all of the elements in this work, including color and light, to portray a sense of calm. So then next we're back to this piece, which is a fun one. It has a lot of things that we're talking about. And so this one is going to be about diagonal composition. Diagonal compositions, to contrast to the horizontal or the linear composition, is used to create a sense of drama and action. So this piece is called Violent Squall on the Adriatic, which is a very, very dramatic title for a very, very dramatic piece. And in this composition, we see all the diagonals, like all the diagonals. We've got diagonal lines in the water, we've got diagonal lines of the ships, diagonal lines of the mast, diagonal lines of the Branyana, and then also the sail there. And then we've got the diagonal line of the dark clouds reinforced by these nets here. This is a very dramatic composition. This is not a fun day out on the water sailing. These are sailors that are trying to haul you know what back to that harbor because that storm is coming and it is coming fast. So the artist is using that diagonal composition to give us that information, to tell us that this is a very, very tense scene. And this is also a really great example of eye lines because, as I mentioned, we've got this very intense diagonal of these dark clouds that come through these nets, that come through these dark clouds, the top of these ships, and where is it leading us? To the harbor in the background. And all of the ships are leaning toward safety. So he's actually using those eye lines to show us exactly where they're going, despite the fact that this painting is quite large, but you can barely see the harbor back there. It's teensy, teensy, tiny, even in the regular painting. Okay, I totally forgot to click through these. These are some of our diagonals, and that is our diagonal eye line that leads us all the way through this piece. Oh, let's see. Whoops. Oh no, my stuff got messed up. There we go. So this is an example of actually two sister pieces, so two separate pieces that do have subtle diagonals through them, not, anything too terribly extreme. On their own, they don't read as being very dramatic compositions, but the artist has actually used diagonal eye lines to connect the two paintings when they are together. So when they're actually placed side by side, they become like two halves of a whole. And the artist is telling us about the story and the intention behind these paintings through the eye lines. So we've got that diagonal of the mast that continues into this sort of roll of the schooner. And then he's even anchored the eye line here with just this little like dead tree spriggy in the water. I'm not exactly sure what that is. And then also he's continued it here. We've got this sort of stepped edge of the deck, and then we've got this smoke that trickles over the deck over here. And he's continued them like perfectly through to draw them together. And then our last compositional structure that we're going to talk about is pyramidal structure, pyramidal composition. And pyramidal composition is typically used to convey strength and stability. And when you think about pyramids, they're inherently very, very strong structures. And so it is sort of the balance between a diagonal composition and a linear composition, but it really does like create like a perfect pyramid. You'll see this a lot of times in Renaissance paintings. Like Da Vinci like really loved pyramids. And so we can see here that the artist is actually using this pyramidal structure of the bodies of the workers, of the nets as well, to create this sense of strength. And so he's actually talking probably or symbolizing the character of the fisherman here. And this work is a very beautiful one named Hauling Nets, and it's by Gifford Beale, the artist Gifford Beale. So then next we're going to talk about scale. And scale is a really fun one too. So scale can have a few different definitions in art, but some of the main ones are the size of the elements in a work of art, especially in relationship to one another, or with relation to the size of the work itself. So scale is oftentimes used to convey importance or grandeur. Maybe you'd think of like the portrait of Napoleon. It's enormous and Napoleon's enormous because they're trying to portray this sense of grandeur and importance. We typically see that in, monumental paintings of kings or gods or rulers or whatever, and the artist is showing how important they are. On the flip side, if we see a teeny tiny person in a vast landscape, maybe the artist is trying to show how tiny man is in the grand expanse of nature. And that's just showing a very small snippet of what scale can do. And like we look at these two and immediately we would think that maybe that one is stronger or more important in some way simply because of the scale. Or here, this is big enough and important enough to take up the majority of the canvas. And maybe this one is kind of small and kind of insignificant. And so those are a few things that an artist can be trying to tell us through the use of scale in a painting. And then lastly, we're going to discuss light. Light can be the very literal illumination of a work. It can give us context clues about the time of day or setting. Woohoo! Are we back? Okay, great, thank you. But light can create a lot of effects. Light gives us information about the story itself. We be able to tell if something is, should I switch over to the handheld? Okay. Can you hear me now? Wonderful. So it can give us information about the time of day. Is this sunrise? Is it sunset? Is it the middle of the night? or it can use to actually give us some information about the piece itself and the artist's intention. So light can also be informed by color. This is a very luminist painting, and luminism is a movement that is completely centered around the portrayal of light in paintings, and typically we'll see very, very intentional use of this very grand light. So here it's very romantic, and it's also emphasized by the use of analogous colors to create harmony. And that's what the Luminists were really going for. They're giving us information about this beautiful expanse of nature here at St. Michael's. And then over here, we've come back to our lovely Violet Squall on the Adriatic. And it's a little hard to see, but we do have a break in the clouds here. And this is another opportunity for the artist to actually give us some information about the painting itself. So if we look here, the light is coming in through this break in these terrifying storm clouds, and it's touching along the edge of the sail here, and then it's coming down the back of the rudder. And right back here at the back of the boat, right there, we have this teeny tiny woman, and she's actually standing on an anchor, and surrounding her, it says, Noi stiamo sotto divina provvidenza, which means we are under divine providence. So the artist is actually using the light within this painting to lead us to this symbol here that the fishermen would have painted on the boat as an act of protection. Basically, they were invoking God's protection because they knew that these storms happened all the time. So the artist is actually giving us some information about the cultural aspect of this scene. And then we've got chiaroscuro. And chiaroscuro is one of my favorite elements of light. It is the extreme contrast of light and dark in order to create drama in a work of art. And this piece is the steamboats Trojan and Rensselaer. And so these are two steamers on the Hudson River. And we can see that the majority of the scene is completely dark or only displayed in silhouette of the full moon, except for Rensselaer. And the artist has actually used the searchlight from Trojan over here at the side to highlight Rensselaer in this very, very grand, dramatic fashion. And he's actually doing this because they're introducing Rensselaer. This is a ship portrait, although a very unique one. So the artist is actually showing us that Rensselaer is the newest addition to the Hudson River Nightline. And he's using this very dramatic chiaroscuro to point that out to us. Oh, okay, so here's the fun part. This is where you guys get to get involved as well. So we're going to go through and look at just a couple of works of art in our collection over the next few minutes. But I want to invite you guys to step beyond the frame with me. We can take all of that we just learned about, tuck it away, that's great, use it or don't, that's totally fine. Those are just tools, and they don't particularly matter here. We're going to have them in our little tool belt to use if we want to, but this next section is really about your own perception, your own thoughts and feelings. But when I was in school, and my very first art history teacher, Miss Prilliman, who has actually been the basis for the majority of the way that I think about art, we would go down to the gallery downstairs at my school. There was like a theater with an art gallery, changing exhibitions. And we would go down there in our art history class, and we would look around, and then we'd gather back up, and she'd say, okay, what do you like? What didn't you like? And we could say, well, I really liked the line, or I really liked this one. And she would say, why? You couldn't just say, I liked it, or I didn't like it. You had to have a why. So she always encouraged us to think deeper. And maybe it was as simple as, that painting was almost entirely orange and I hate the color orange. Or that line was really violent and totally bisected the piece, and it, really like broke up the composition to me, or it felt violent, or it felt, uncomfortable to me. So I invite you to use your own personal experience and what you see to think about some of these pieces. And again, there is no right and wrong. So our first piece is one that is actually here in the galleries at the Mariners. You can take a peek at this back in our monitor center. And this piece is called Rescue of the Crew of USS Monitor by USS Rhode Island, December 31st, 1862. And this work was painted in 1892 by William Richardson Tyler, and he actually painted it for George Gear, who was a survivor of the sinking. He was on Monitor and survived the sinking and commissioned this portrait. So what's the first thing we notice? Light and dark, absolutely. So where's your eye drawn to immediately? Absolutely. And what's illuminated? The water, absolutely. So I thought that this was the sinking of Monitor. Where's Monitor? It's sinking. This, right there, teensy tiny, already half consumed by these dark waves, completely enveloped in shadow. The artist is telling us that it's lost. And there's something that's really interesting here about this piece, because I thought light was typically used to highlight the subject. So why do we think the artist would be highlighting the water instead? It was the middle of the night, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. Those are all great. And what do we see here? It's the rescue boat. These are the sailors that are actually escaping from Monitor, and they are trying to make it to safety. So Monitor's lost, but are they gonna make it? That's what the artist is trying to show us here. And what's really interesting, actually, if we get up close, and this is where composition gets really, really interesting. Can y'all see this bit right here, this sort of shadow, and it kind of continues up? You see that a little bit? That's called pentimento. So the artist has actually painted over part of the composition. So he's actually created even more space in the composition between the lifeboat and the back of Rhode Island. So he's creating even more drama and even more tension in the scene by compositionally placing these two further apart. So he's actually heightening that question of, are they gonna make it? He's also very intentionally used color. So what color really sticks out here to you guys? What's that? White and yellow? Yeah, absolutely. What else? There's one thing in particular that really sticks out to me. The lantern. Yeah, the red lantern. So green's complementary color is red. And he's only used red in these two places in the whole entire painting. And yes, this is factual. So they would have had this red emergency signal lantern on board both of the ships, but he's not showing it on Monitor, despite the fact that it was the last thing seen of Monitor, the red signal lantern that's in our galleries. was the last thing seen of USS Monitor, but he's showing us the one here on the Rhode Island because he's already showing us that Monitor's gone. So instead, he's using this to create that drama and that intrigue, and then he's almost creating this symbolism. And I don't know if it was intentional or not, by showing the reflection of the red light in the water, depicting the sinking. At least that's what it seems like to me. Did we have any? Whoa, no. We're cheating. Oh no. Oh no. I thought I had another one. I'm sorry. Do we have any other thoughts or feelings about this painting? Is this a feel-good painting? No, this is a very sad one. What makes you feel sad about it? Really? I love that. Tell me about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I find it a hopeful painting because here you have nature and it's immense, and the ship has sunk over there, and you have man in this little bitty boat who is going to survive. So, personal experience.
I love that though. And I mean that this is huge because absolutely we are looking at these through our own lens, and it's absolutely. It's sad, but it is hopeful. Absolutely. What else? Anybody else have likes, dislikes, thoughts, feelings? What makes it dramatic for you? Yeah. Absolutely. And so the lines of the mast here, as Rhode Island is rolling in this storm, one of the only things that we can see in the silhouette of this whole painting is the fact that we've got this wave that's crashing into Rhode Island and forcing it sideways. And that diagonal composition is actually continuing down through the diagonals and the waves as well. So the artist is using the compositional structure to reinforce that drama. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
I find it spooky and scary.
What about it? What about the work itself makes it feel spooky and scary?
The darkness and the ships tilting and
Absolutely. He's also using this really yellowy green of like an angry sea. So he's also using color here to create this uncomfortable feeling.
The moonlit sky above the raging sea. That sky reminds me, everyone has seen pictures of cemeteries at Halloween, and it's that eerie, when the ship's rolling that much and seas like that, and there's a little boat trying to reach safety, the big boat. This is man against the raging sea, and it's almost tragic because in a situation like that, the odds are very good that somebody's going to die.
I hadn't thought about the factor of hope, but as I look at that moon, it's like leading you to the light, like drawing you to
Absolutely. Light. Yeah, the moon for me, it felt magnetic. Like it's just calling us in, just making us want to step further and further into the work.
We've had a couple of comments online that were some of the words that were used were tension and struggle.
I love it. And then we'll take one more and then we'll go on to the next work.
Well, I can see from the composition that you demonstrated here with the angular lines and the colors and the lighting. When I first looked at it, it made me feel the drama of the big ship looks like it's in danger itself, and then we see the little rowboat or whaleboat. We wonder if the sailors are going to make it, because so the whole thing is just pure drama, because you instantly are concerned with the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mystery, I'll grab that. Okay, so I kind of spoiled it a little bit, but we've got a completely different painting here. So what's the first thing that we notice about this work? The colors. The colors are radiant. So tell me what the colors tell you about this painting. Sunshine, happy, absolutely. This is a happy spot. Now, what structurally about this painting is very different from some of the other paintings that we've looked at? And I haven't cropped these. There is a diagonal, absolutely, running perfectly through the middle of this piece. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You do. You absolutely do. You've got a lot there in the foreground.
It's confusing to me because the green at the bottom is very yellow and the green at the top is very green, and I don't understand why.
That also might be our screen, unfortunately. The colors on this piece are so much better in person, I promise. So what about the actual structure of the piece? It's not a portrait style painting. It's not a landscape style painting. What about the canvas? It's square. It's square. And she's done this to actually create this perfectly balanced top and bottom of the composition. So literally, I took the exact same shape when I was looking at this. I was like, is that like same? And it is. I took the same shape, flipped it, and sure enough, they line up on the bottom. And she's divided the foreground and then the middle and background by using this very intentional compositional structure that may or may not have been as interesting in a landscape or a portrait style piece. So what about the brush strokes? What about the line? Very precious. Yeah. What was that? Yeah. What do those sort of large, quick brush strokes, what sense do we get from them? Calm. Yeah. What else?
Happy.
Happy. Bubbly. This is a piece that feels good. Yeah. Do you like it? No. Why don't you like it? Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. You're right. There's not.
Online, they're saying easy and carefree.
Easy
brush
and
strokes.
carefree. I like it.
And soft.
And soft. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's comfortable. Yeah.
I was going to say, I like the piece. I like Impressionism, but I like it because it makes me feel peaceful and at ease and meditative. And
Yeah,
calm.
absolutely. And so this is Gloucester Harbor. This was painted by Jane Peterson, a female artist, in 1920. Any last thoughts, or we'll move on to the next piece? Yes. Uh-huh. Mhm. 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 Absolutely. She's also got a lot more going on in the background. So compositionally, she's sort of drawing you further in by creating all of that, the sort of bubbly action at the top of the harbor. I've got one more. Sure. You know, they kind of are. You're right. You like. That's fascinating. I'm trying to do it. Yeah. Very interesting. I like it. Wonderful. Massachusetts. Yes, thank you. Okay. So for our third painting, we're coming back local. So we're stepping onto the floor of the foundry at Newport News Shipbuilding in 1953. And if any of you guys have seen this piece before, hold on to it for a moment. So what do we immediately see? What do you immediately think? Where are you drawn to? Why? There's action, there's light, there's warmth there. Absolutely. Like, we don't want to get close to that. Right. Yeah, absolutely. We've literally got like burning metal sparking out of there, and we've got steam here in the foreground. What else do we think about this? What do we see? What do we think? It does look like it would be very loud. Good job putting yourself in the scene. Yeah, what about him? Yeah. Yes. Hey, I'm from Memphis. Mm-hmm. So you've got this personal experience that is informing the way that you're viewing this piece. That's fantastic. Yes, we've got an online.
Kyra, online, Jeanette is saying she is recognizing the confidence of the men in the painting. And then we have Barbara, who is saying that it looks very hot as well.
Absolutely. And so the artist, and again, the colors are off a little bit, but regardless, in the actual piece itself, that there is just heat and light radiating out of that crucible. Yes. Right here in the back, isn't this cool? And what about the color structure? So we've got blue contrasted with orange. So he's actually making the orange feel even more vibrant by having the blue there that has this cool feeling. And he's making the yellow of the crucible even hotter by complementing it with the blue. We're going to go over here first. Yeah, and then over to you.
I see the vision in the picture, and it's vertically divided in two halves.
Mm-hmm.
The left side is an upside down triangle where the figures are placed.
Mm-hmm.
Then the right side is more horizontal.
Yeah, I like that. Yes. Yeah. And so it's interesting that we can actually see their expression. How big do y'all think this piece is? This is 6.5 feet tall by 10.5 feet wide. Now, how's that for scale? How does that change your perception of the piece? That's big. Does it make it more or less approachable, knowing that it's like, this is literally a floor to ceiling rack in painting storage? Those figures are about 3.5 feet tall each. How does that change the idea? Yeah, we'll go back there. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would not want to get any closer.
Kyra,
Yeah, I believe it. Yes.
online, someone mentioned teamwork.
Teamwork. Interesting. Very cool. And so one of the things that I think is the most fascinating part, and we've talked a little bit about the character of the people and what we've been able to see with them. We've said that we feel like we're there on this foundry floor. Because of the scale, we're actually able to see the faces and the expressions of these shipbuilders. We're able to see this foreman, and he's okay, slow now. And we can actually learn a little bit about the people in these paintings. And these were actually real people in the paintings. Actually, this foreman has been identified. I don't remember his name. This work is The Foundry, aptly named. And this was painted by Thomas Skinner, who interestingly was the museum's staff artist, but he painted scenes of the shipyard. So this is number 11 of 12 in his shipyard series of murals that we have here. And this is the last mural he completed before he passed away. Yes. This is 53. Possibly, yeah. So he did do a lot of work from photographs. He also did a lot of sketching in and around the shipyard. So he actually did have a studio at the shipyard for a period of time. And so he would go and sketch around the yard. And he would also do watercolor sketches as well. And then he would paint from those. He would actually enlarge them onto the canvas. So now we're looking at this sense of scale. And what does scale typically represent in a work of art? Importance, significance. So what are the biggest elements in this painting? The molten pot, yeah, absolutely. But what about the people? They are significant. And so Skinner is not only showing us the importance and the significance of what they're building here at the shipyard, but who is actually building it. The people in our own community, these people whose faces he's been able to show through scale. So he is celebrating actually the shipyard workers in our own community that are making these enormous pieces. Yeah. And you know, it may not be entirely accurate, but this is, the artist's perception, and this is one of the things that he is showing us. Okay. About out of time? Okay. Do we have one more? Just a quote?
A quote, perfect.
Okay. So I want to leave you guys this last piece. I was hoping that we were going to have time to get to, but we don't. And this piece is really one where everything truly comes together for me. This is Guadalupe leaving Bayonne forever. This work is actually by the same gentleman who did the lithograph that we looked at earlier with the line. And he has used color, light, line, and composition to tell us about his personal experience with this ship. And I think it's so interesting. We'll have to scoot through some of these because this ship was actually painted, really at the end of the age of sail. So Guadalhorce was a kerosene ship. It was an oil ship. And it was quite old. And so he's showing it here, leaving Bayonne, New Jersey for the very, very last time. And he had this sort of very close relationship with this ship that he's actually showed us through a lot of the elements in this painting. But there was one of his friends that said about him, John looked closely at the grain of things, the grain in weathered wood in wrecks, the grain of the sea, the grain in conversations and the everyday exchanges of life, even the sacral grain that runs through life and work. John's work can make you see it. Sit yourself before the Guadalhorce leaves Bayonne forever, and you will see that grain. John looked at life from an odd angle so the light would catch the grain of these things. So I hope that just like this artist, you'll look for those grains and you'll look for the little teeny pieces that make us individual, that make these works so unique and so special, but also look at those grains of your own life as we look at these works as well. So thank you so much. Yes, I don't know if we have time for questions.
Thank you, Kyra. I know that you all have a few questions, but feel free to come up and chat with Kyra. Thank you all so much, both in-house as well as online.